your thing. We are live. Welcome everybody to American Sex Live. I'm Sunny Megatron. Or he is the walrus, or is he Paul?
Cuckoo-ca-choo.
Only like the really old people are going to get that. Actually, this is Ken Melvoinberg. We are both sexuality educators, pleasure advocates, and we are kinky perverts too.
We're married.
Yes, we're also married to each other, which means we talk over each other, and then we're like, no, I was going to say it.
No, I was going to say it.
Okay, whatever. You see, we have two amazing, very well lit people in the square next to us. Those are our guests today, Stefanos and Shay. We're going to be talking about edge play. But you know, if you've been here before we get to the meaty, juicy part of the sandwich or the dessert or the what, I don't know what metaphor. What is this? A dessert? This is a dessert.
If it's wait. If it's a meaty part of the dessert, I don't want it. I'm going to pass.
In some areas of the world, they have meat desserts, like your meat dessert. Anyway,
I'm a meat dessert, but I'm not gonna eat me.
I wish you were flexible enough because I totally watched that. Anyway,
I might be able to. I am double jointed.
That's true. We'll try that later. Not on Get Vocal because that's not allowed. But before we get to that, we need to do our housekeeping, which so lovingly we call here our ball washing. So let's get the balls washed so we can get to the good stuff. So those of you who haven't been on our Get Vocal show before, welcome. We're happy to have you. Let me tell you how things go around here. You might be watching right on the Get Vocal platform. You might also be watching the simulcast on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or on Periscope. You're welcome to watch on whatever platform you want to, but the folks that are over on Get Vocal have a special benefit. They can interact with us in the chat. The only chat we can see right now is the chat on Get Vocal. Also, we're going to open 2 other camera slots a little bit later in our conversation. So if you want to pop on camera and ask us questions and engage in the conversation, you can. I will warn everyone, this is your consent right here. I'm telling you, if you choose to pop on camera with us, you will be simulcast on all those places. A couple weeks ago, we had 5,000 people watching live across our 3 simulcast platforms. There were only like 10 people here on Get Vocal. I'm like, no one's here. And then I look over on Periscope when I'm done. I'm like, 5,000 people were watching us talk about dicks. That's great. So just know 5,000 people could potentially see you. Sometimes we also do use the audio for this broadcast for our podcast that drops on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So just know you might end up there too.
Real quick, Reverend Chip says a joy, and I thought it said Reverend Chip Ahoy at first. Like my fat ass thought it was something about a cookie.
Like cookies.
Cookies.
I have the desserts. Anyway, if you haven't been on Get Vocal before, it's a great platform. We're part of a Wednesday night lineup called the #Connection Zone. Shows all about sex, love, dating, relationships, and they go on all night for hours upon hours. And different nights have different themes. Next day, the day that's not now, but the one this way is
tomorrow.
My brain. Tomorrow, that's the word. Hi. Tomorrow is True Crime Thursday, so there's a great lineup of shows for that. Friday, Stand-Em Friday. There's like Spiritual Sunday or Spirit Sunday, something like that. There's there's so many, like Meaningful Monday, Munchy Monday, Tasty Tuesday. There's a lot every day, so go check out the platform. What else? If you like what we do here or really anywhere else, because Ken and I give the vast majority, almost all of our content away for free because we feel these conversations are really important for people and the world. If you like what we're doing and you're on Get Vocal, hit that little blue diamond in the chat button. You can give us tips, buy us a coffee. And if you really, really like the stuff that we do, go visit us on Patreon, which is patreon.com/American Sex.
Fuck, I miss coffee.
I know.
From the before times, going to a coffee shop. And you know, like I was just thinking today, what was the last concert you guys actually saw? Because my last concert was Marilyn Manson, and I don't know how I feel about that right now. It was okay at Halloween when I saw it, but
yeah, well, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, last thing. If you're on a simulcast platform and you want to come on over to Get Vocal, above wherever your screen is, above where you're watching, should be a link. Click on that; it'll bring you over to Get Vocal. And those of you who are on Get Vocal, the beginning of the chat when I went live, it said, here's the links to share with your friends. Share this shit with your friends because this is going to be a damn good conversation. You're going to learn things. It also might get weird. So they need to be here. So take the time to do that. Now I'm gonna unmute Stefanos and Shay. And I have the power. Okay.
You have superpowers. I didn't know you could do that.
I actually did it with my mind and my nipples. With the help of my nipples and my mind,
You could conquer any of those two things.
I can't. 3 actually. I have 2 nipples and my mind.
One set of nipples.
Anyway,
Nipples
so
mind.
as I said, we are going to be talking about edge play today. But before we get there, for those watching who, thank you, Get Vocal just gave us 250 V coins.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Get Vocal.
For those of you who don't know Stefanos and Shay, can you tell us who the hell you are and why the hell you're so cool and why the hell these people that don't know you should know you?
And wait, first of all, I want to say one thing. Out of all of the educators that we have ever had the pleasure of working with, I think that Sunny and I have the most respect for these 2 people. Stefanos and Shay are 2 of the best educators in the world. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. You guys are amazing. Yeah. So go ahead, say what you're going to say.
Who are you besides the best educators in the world?
Yes.
How the fuck do we follow that one up, Dennis? Who are we? Well, I'll start with the simple stuff and let Shay fill in the rest. We're a happy pansexual polyamorous play slut couple and alliteration fetishists. You might be able to tell that from listening to me.
If you bust out a pun, it'll be over.
You know, I don't know. I'm not going to go there. But dad jokes aside. No, Shay and I have been together for a long time. I'm not allowed to say how many years we've been together. So I won't say it out loud, but it's been a little bit. And we've really enjoyed our life. We've educated on 2 different continents and many different countries and done things. I think mainly, though, we should probably yak about a little bit of our personal stuff. I've worked for Kink.com for years. I managed the upper floor for a long time. I was a former owner of Bondage A Go-Go in San Francisco. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. Go ahead.
We're excited to be here from San Francisco Bay Area. That's where we're streaming from. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. Stefanos is he, him, or they, them. And we've been teaching together for a lot of years, and edge play is one of our favorite topics. So we were super excited to talk with you both about this and just to get a chance. We love you as educators as well. You are super awesome, and we're excited to have a chance to chat with you.
So before we dive in to the nitty gritty really quick, I just want to give a caveat, a content note or whatnot, that we are going to be talking about some extreme things today. We may be talking about consensual non-consent or consensual forced situations. So I want to lay that on the table so you know. We also may be talking about
fire and knives.
Well, yes. Things that you're just like straight to the point. I'm like, let me get to the activities that may be extreme. And we are not here today to give you details on how to carry out those activities. There's a couple of reasons why. This is a casual evening chat amongst friends, and it would be irresponsible of us to be like, here's how you do all these really fucked up things that could be really dangerous. If you're going to be doing those things, we strongly advise / demand that you get proper training for these things, and that you have lots of practice. We're talking about the philosophy around it. So I want to make that clear. Is there anything, caveats you want to add that piggyback off of that?
When we teach an edge play class in person, we generally do the whole trigger warning, content warning, and definitely consent as well for giving people, if at any point you're like, wow, that took a turn and I am not comfortable with that subject. We encourage self-care and whatever that looks like for you. If it's not something that that you want to listen to, then there's lots of options for you. So we're going to try to just be talking about more the philosophy of it and not, like you said, the how-to, since this is an online discussion.
Exactly. So I think, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. Sometimes when Shay and I teach this class, which we're not doing today, we're just discussing it, but just to give people a clue, we will talk about things that are very personal to us, and we will share stories that are very personal to our own experiences, not anybody else's. And when we share these stories, there have been times in which they've touched people emotionally. And because of that, we've had the honor of teaching the class in person. And if that ever did happen in person, we were able to communicate with the people after the class or during the class about the situation. This is not a class, but a discussion. Should that happen, I would like to be able to be there for people, but I don't know how many of you are going to be watching. And I'm not even sure how to communicate that. But I just want to be very clear that if we share any stories that we're doing that are very personal and connected to us, that become emotional, if anybody, I want to tell you that we're doing it out of our own experience and out of love and to share with you, not out of any particular sadistic or non-consensual need. And if you find yourself in a situation that you're thinking that's too much, please do yourself a favor, or if necessary, mute us or whatever it takes so that you feel safe to be part of this discussion. This is not for everybody, and we'll get into that.
So I think that's where I want to start, because this is a very mixed audience. I see even on the Get Vocal chat, there's some people who are very entrenched in the BDSM community. And I know there are also other people that just kind of stumbled along like, ooh, they're talking about something kinky. What's this? So let's start with, what is edge play? Because I know there's a lot of misconceptions about what people think it is, but they're not right. So what's edge play?
Yeah, there's a quote that I really like, which comes from someone named Mina's Musings on Twitter. And it says, I don't wrestle with my demons anymore. Actually, I think we're dating now. And they're not bad in the sex. And I think that's kind of what I think of when I'm thinking about edge play. It's like some of those demons, and how can we take them to bed with us? So sometimes that's what we're looking at. There can be categories to edge play. People think about physical or psychological edge play.
And these particular categories that we want to get in, that we'll get into maybe or maybe not, depending on how this conversation goes, is also to understand that edge play is not, some people think it's about really heavy, physical, intense play. Like sorry for those of you who this might frighten, but there's people who are like, well, I once used a barbed wire flogger. That's not what edge play is necessarily about. Edge play can be like, okay, so here's an example. Edge play can be that wooden paddle that sits in the corner, or that wooden spoon that scares the shit out of you for any reason, because maybe it's connected to some things that happened in your childhood, or maybe because it's just really frightening. Your partner spanked you with your hand, but now a wooden spoon? I don't know if I can go there. That's maybe too far for me. And some people are like, well, that's not edge play, but it is for the person who's about to experience it. So edge play does not need to be that crazy thing on the edge. It's that thing that is your edge.
I like that. I like that.
So it's important to understand that this is not just about really sadistic or consensual, non-consensual play, or this really involved process where I'm doing things to you or you're doing things to me. Because there's the physical side and the mental side that we'll talk a little bit more about as we get into this. But edge play itself is about what feels for you as if you're crossing a space that you want to cross and that you feel safe to cross with the person you're crossing it with. But it doesn't mean it's barbed wire and blood. It could be something as simple as, I'm going to accept your service, and it's awkward for me to accept someone's service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you had mentioned that there are categories of edge play, and we don't know if we're going to get into it. I think for purposes of really like honing in and defining what edge play can and can't be, let's go there. Let's talk about like how you break down what edge play is, or the different categories.
Sure. I think we look at physical and psychological, which you can look at those things separately, but it's important to note that they are intertwined. They're not as separate as you might think they are. Pain, the experience of pain, is entirely mediated by your brain. Pain is your body's somewhat paranoid guess about how much danger you're in. And there's lots of ways that we can harness psychological and physical together, which is sometimes what we're doing in edge play. And we think about making play, you can think about like the lightning and the thunder. And sometimes edge play can be about how can we make things more thunder, so more scary, more reaction, more loud sound, and not as much lightning, which is the perhaps dangerous things, which gets into like risk mitigation and how can we do that as part of an edge play scene. But looking at some of those, both physical and psychological categories, a lot of types of pain a lot of types of edge play and we'll maybe talk about cathartic play, can be about using physical pain to release emotional pain. And what does that look like for people? So moving into those types of play. And then also we look at edge play for kind of categorizing for the top, for the bottom, and for the observers.
So just really quick to help those who are kind of new to these words. So when we use words like top or bottom or giver or receiver or dominant or submissive, let's make it really simple for a second. When Shay and I's relationship, how we've determined it is I am generally the dominant or the giver side of things, and Shay is more of the submissive or receiver side of things. It just works out that way in our relationship. We're both actually switches, and I play with a lot of different people from different angles. It's just that Shay finds herself not able to be my dominant, which is really sad.
No.
Because, oh no, like a 5'10" gorgeous blonde woman ordering me around, bring it on. Sadly, she doesn't do that.
Doesn't work for
It doesn't work for her. Anyway, so now the categories we want to talk about really quick, when Shay said there's edge play for the top or the bottom, if you just take our dynamic for a second, I would be considered the top or the dominant, Shay would be considered the bottom or the submissive, right? And that doesn't necessarily go with gender roles. That's just how it works out in our relationship. Now, edge play is often thought of as the thing the dominant or the top does to the bottom or the submissive. This is what we know, that time when you've spanked someone so far that they're crying and you're saying humiliating, dirty things to them, and their brain starts to slip back into some place. And, there's all these edgy things that are happening to their mind and their body, and they're getting taken further and further. Or that time that I forced orgasms out of Shay until her body couldn't do it anymore and she was crying. There's all these different things. That's what's traditionally thought of as edge play, is I'm doing the mean, nasty things to the poor, helpless.
And the bottom's the one who's being pushed to some kind of, edge, or, physically, psychologically being pushed.
So another way we like to look at it also is that sometimes what I'm about to do is the thing you asked for, and it's hard for me to do it. I have a story about that, actually. Yeah. I'll tell the story about Jen. So it's really, so back when I was just a little baby Dom, way back in the day, and I was all back in Minnesota, and if someone from Minnesota is watching this in Minneapolis, they might have even seen this story live, in a sense. There was this incredible human being that I played with who brought me some really incredible relationship moments, and they really loved having like this whole punching scene and this kicking thing. And this really wasn't edge play for us, right? Like if you watched it, it looked really violent, but it was something that we really wanted to do. And it was really easy for me to do that. Like, that she said she loved it. I loved doing it. We're doing a hardcore play. However, when we got done with this, what she wanted for aftercare, and to pull it aside real quick, aftercare is the sort of situation that happens after you do some sort of heavy connection scene that might involve pain or other intense sensation or intense situations. Things that help bring you back together and in touch for who you are and who you are as a couple, who you are as a community, as a grouping. So her form of aftercare was to curl up in a ball after delivering me a martini and cleaning my boots and being a footstool.
I had one of those too, actually. Yeah. She just wanted to. She wanted to just be objectified afterwards and just like serve me, make me a Manhattan, get me a cigar, and be my footstool.
Which is cool, except I grew up in an extremely misogynistic household where my father was treated my mother like that, and I refused to never be like him.
Aww.
So this became a really hard thing for me to do.
Oh.
And to deliver aftercare to someone who I became a partner with after these scenes was edge play for me.
Oh.
I needed to learn to understand that this is what she wanted and that this is something that made her whole. And that I needed permission to understand that I was not going to be my dad.
Wow.
So I have a question for you. As a top, I need aftercare in situations like that, and I don't think enough people talk about the aftercare of tops.
Like aftercare of aftercare?
But this seems like, is it a cycle where it's like a mirror and a mirror and a mirror and a mirror where it's aftercare, 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 aftercare? So what do you need for aftercare in that kind of situation?
So we would finish our scene and we would do our thing, and I would be delivered my drink, and I would smoke a cigarette and put my feet up on her, and when we got done with that, she would give me her signal by stretching her body that she was done. And all she ever needed to do was come up and just look me in the face and tell me, it is okay. This is what I wanted, no matter how scared I looked. I remember her one time coming out of it, and I was terrified. I couldn't even put my feet on her. I was terrified. And the more time she was able to comfort me that this is what she wanted, the easier it was to understand a level of service I was never be able to accept or deliver prior to that, in looking at the situations going back and forth in there. And it allowed me to cross an edge, to be free to understand that there are people that want things consensually that I'm not hurting the way someone else had taught me or showed me that you can hurt people. And it was a really big space for me as a young human being to go, oh my God, I can actually do this. And people are okay with it. And so the aftercare I got was her literally telling me it was okay.
Wow.
You know, that's interesting. That almost echoes. I mean, I definitely not in the same situation as you were with parents and stuff like that, because I didn't have a dad. So, but I just need to know, like, for aftercare, that I'm not a piece of shit, because that's what I feel like in those situations, that I'm a total piece of dog shit and I fucked up. I did something that waffles.
He's like, you're not dog shit, Dad.
Oh, is that Waffles? Oh, Waffles, you're back. You were there earlier today with us. Hello, Waffles.
The best cameo. That dog knows how to be on camera.
Totally.
But yeah, I think one point that I wanted to make as well, you asked about, disclaimers and things. I would want to make super clear. We talk about edge play and pushing limits. We want to really specify that's always in a consensual way. Violating someone's hard limits is never what we're talking about. That's not edge play. That's, a consent violation. That's possibly assaults. That's possibly a lot of that's absolutely not what we're talking about. We're talking about exploring in a consensual way those edges that you're intrigued by, but maybe a little scared of, which sometimes makes them more intriguing.
So, I mean, like, just even looking at the edges, right? Like I talked about the spoon or the feet on someone because of my past. There's these things, right? Okay, so there's this sort of this field of fucks analogy that Shay likes to use when we teach this class and that we talk about. Before Shay does the field of fucks kind of thing, I would like to say that there's these spaces you're never gonna go. Okay, so it's a jokey moment that I have with people, but I'll give it to you all to hear. There's 4 things I will never ever do sexually or with BDSM. Okay, it's kids, critters, corpses, and karaoke. Now, I put karaoke on that list. You know how strongly I feel about it, right? So these are the things I'll never do. But then there's this other list of things, right? They're more like
and there's more things than that, just to be clear.
It's a conversational moment. Please don't quote me out of
and
this.
Also, it was perfect for alliteration. It was the perfect grouping. So yeah.
Yeah, and they're all spelled with a K when I say them, apparently, or a C. But the point of my story is there's this next level below that. These are the things that you're like, I might do, right? I might do these things. I might do them with Shay. There's some things I'll never do with Shay, but I might do with you. Or I might do with someone I barely know.
And never have to see again.
And never have to see again, right? And then there's these things I'll pretty much do with anybody. Not that I'm a slut, because I'm a whore. I get paid for that shit. All right. But the point being,
he has been a sex worker.
I've done sex work.
Porn.
So yeah, porn and things. So I get to say I get to be a whore. But and you get to say it too, actually.
As Carter points out,
Carter just said you're a slut too, and that's
well, right. I mean, I think when you're doing it for fun, you're slut, and that should be a power moment, not an insult. But so when there's those 3 levels, right? The things I'll never do, the things I'll do with this variety of people I mentioned, and then there's the things I'll more or less do with anybody. When we're doing edges, you're looking at not those 4 things. You're looking at that other list. Right. That other list that's a little tiny bit scary or a little tiny bit that could make something about the relationship you're in vulnerable. And something, when we do it, the idea is about lifting up. About lifting up. It's not about, for as many scenes as I've done, and over the years Shay and I have been together degrading Shay, it has always been about lifting Shay up
And it maybe doesn't look like it. It's the idea of, when a seed sprouts, it looks like it's being destroyed, but it's actually growing, right? And I think sometimes I experience edge play that way, where it looks like utter destruction, but it's actually a growth and a freeing opportunity for me. So looking at it in a different way.
Now, I've always, said that there are people who definitely use BDSM therapeutically, and I always reiterate that does not mean it is therapy. Like, we have a place in our lives for therapy, but it can be therapeutic. And if you have a therapist that talks to you about your kink stuff, and then you can deconstruct the therapeutic stuff that happened in your scenes with your therapist, that is the best scenario. Anyway, so would you say that when you engage in edge play, it always has that deeper therapeutic psychological edge to it? Or sometimes do you engage in edge play just because, like, it's super fucked up and it hurts and I like it, and there's no deep psychological reason?
Let's have a moment of thought about that. Shay, do you mind telling everybody what your day job is?
I just say I work in healthcare.
Okay.
Right. So Shay works in healthcare. And some things that I do in everyday kink play, you would think was edgy. Like, as an example, I will beat someone with a towing chain. Thick ass, gigantic links, weighs 45, 50 pounds. That's a Tuesday night.
You know what? I also keep thinking, like, not about the pain, but like, my God, that must be hard on your arms.
Oh,
it's the gun show. That's why tickets to the gun show.
No, it is. It kind of beats up your shoulders. But no, the point is some of the things that I do, right? Like, you see me walk into a dungeon carrying a kiddie pool and a bunch of needles, and you're like, oh my God, that's edge play. But for someone who works in healthcare, that's fucking Tuesday at work.
Yeah. So it's, in terms of answering your question, I think that in terms of do we do it for this reason or that reason, the basic answer is yes. It depends. We do for both reasons. And I think you can probably relate to that. I know y'all are some people who do some edge play too, maybe once in a while. But there's definitely times when it's a whole story and a narrative, and, we're dealing with this issue in our relationship. And so we're going to work it out through this edge play scene that we've talked about for months. And it's this very evolved, thing. And then there's sometimes when it's just force orgasms until you're a puddle of goo, and it doesn't matter how many times you tell me to stop, I'm not going to, because we've worked that out as the consensual moment.
Which, for the record, forced orgasms till you beg me to stop is usually a scene I used to do on kink.com.
Yeah.
So like, literally, it was 4 days a week for me. So
that was his actual job.
Right. I have a medical claim for carpal tunnel from too much of this and too much flogging. This hand, my right hand, I had to wear a brace for tennis elbow. I had to go to a doctor. Kink.com got me workman's comp for tennis elbow because I was fingering too many people. This particular, there's a muscle here that rotates. You see that muscle? Yeah. That is from too much fucking fingering pussies and asses.
He needs some sympathy. Like, oh.
Yeah, I'm left-handed, so it's not from jerking off. It's from actually sex. Because my left shoulder had to always be out so you could see the camera shot.
You've got G-spot arm. Are you okay?
I do. No, so giving someone like forced orgasms, that's fun for me. That's not play.
Yeah.
That's
like, it's play for me when it happens to me. I'm just saying.
Right.
But,
right. For her, it's like the end of the world, right? But for me, that's like, it's Tuesday afternoon. We're just going to do this until, and then, oh, look at that. And then, so yeah, we do both.
Would you say you do both also?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely.
It's subjective and situational. It really is. Like you were saying, it's, how does it hit you here? How does it hit you here? How does it hit you there? It all depends. Yeah. The combinations are endless and the reasons are endless. Shay, you mentioned cathartic play. And I'm really curious what your definition of cathartic play is, because I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling it's really good and we need to know. So what is it?
I would say for me personally, a lot of times catharsis looks like crying or yelling and getting really angry and kind of letting out my evil bitch from hell. When I do edge play as a top, a lot of times it's just me getting to be that completely unreasonable bitch from hell, that I don't get to be in my usual job. And I ask you to bring me a plate of food and you put a piece of, cheddar jack cheese on it. And don't you know I don't like cheddar jack cheese? And now I'm going to scream at you about that for an hour or whatever. And that's extremely cathartic. It's so wonderful to just, all these feelings need to be felt, right? And so how can we create a container for that, that feels safe for our relationships and lets us express those things? When I'm bottoming for edge play, a lot of times catharsis looks like crying. And the moment that I get the best catharsis it always looks a little odd for people. Usually it's at the end of a scene. Stefanos has reduced me to this crying, mess on the floor. And then he literally will like kick and push me away. And I go to my aftercare person and just bawl.
Oh.
Which, let's be clear, the aftercare person is not me.
No, not him.
Because I'm the one going to my aftercare person. Because sometimes I will like as an example, this one came out of my mouth one day by complete accident. We were doing this demo in an edge play class, and I did this whole demo to her, and I kicked her to the ground and I spit on her, and out of nowhere, it came out of my mouth. I looked down at her and said, "You were better when you were younger."
Oh, yeah.
Put my boot on her shoulder and kicked her away.
And I was a little bit like, whoa, we haven't done that one.
Wow. Because there's people who've seen our class before and they're like, oh, we've seen some of your demos. We know they slightly repeat. There's like there's a moment, right? Because you're a professional teacher, so that happens. And I was like, yeah, that was not rehearsed.
That just came out of nowhere.
And it had come out of my mouth on later during one of the times we were together, and it had a different feel, right? Because we know when a demo ends and when a scene ends, and they're different, right? I mean, I remember this tearing Shay apart kind of thing. People have seen us do it a few times, and we used to do it in our classes. And people are like, you guys have been together for a little while. And, I'm not supposed to say how many years, but I've hinted earlier about how many it might have been. And we'll look at that. Anyway, yeah, it's been a while. And the point is people are like, how can you keep doing edge play scenes? Like, just how many fucking edges can you find in each other's relationship? And the thing about it is that there's a lot of catharsis that couples carry. Mm-hmm. And that Shay and I've had to work out that don't have anything to do with edge play, just by being together. And I mean, like, you guys have been together for a couple of years. I heard 5. It might be more. I'm not sure. But I heard 5. And whatever.
5, 1 or 2.
Exactly. Anyway, you've been a while together, and there's things that you have, right? And so, like, Shay and I have done moments. I'll tell a story if you'd like. I love telling stories. So we were at Thunder in the Mountains, and Shay had been working on this website called Remedial Ropes. It was a bondage safety site, which now has been, well known and super successful. But at the time, it had taken about a year of Shay's life, which meant Shay was spending a lot of her free time away from me, developing this website. Mm-hmm. And Shay was very concerned that it was having this much impact on the world. Okay. And I was very annoyed because it took away all this much time of our world. And we had a lot to work out about it. We talked about it. We were pretty clear, but we decided we wanted to do an edge play scene about it. And so when we were teaching this class, we did a demo. And so she got to wallow in that dark pit of all my work is for naught and feel terrible about it.
And cry about it and like snot about it and just get it all out.
And I got to be really fucking angry at her for stealing time for a website, for taking our time for a project that was hers. Because I felt, because our life was very busy at the time, she worked and then she'd do this and we have kids and all these things. And I felt like I had lost out. Now, these are feelings we've shared. And, and if you're a couple, sometimes you have these emotions, right? And they're really irrational and they suck. But like, how do you talk to your partner about it? And we did, and we worked it out, but we felt like we could really work it out. So we really worked it out. And I got to scream and yell at Shay about this shit. I got to lose my ever-loving mind and say what was there. I mean, like, I had this kitty who loves warm. It's like 85 degrees in this room we're at. That's why I'm sweating. And she's like calmly happy. I had the hotel fill 2 5-gallon buckets with iced water. I stripped her naked and made her stand in the water and attached her labia to the buckets.
Oh,
It's not very nice.
So if she stood up, she'd have to rip clothespins off her labia. And then to be a real horrible person, I have an airsoft pistol I carried. And I aimed at her and said, you know I don't carry load for this because I just brought it on an airplane. But if you stand up, you're going to find out if someone went to Walmart down the street and loaded it for me.
oh,
At which point, I got to yell at her about being upset. She got to wallow in her moment. So I
But
looked at,
then he twisted the scene at the end.
well, before that, I looked at the audience and asked the audience if anybody had ever heard of remedialropes.com. And there was a sign behind Shay that said, yell no.
He's a dick.
oh, I hate you. I love
Which made her
you.
feel very terrible, right? Which made her feel very, very terrible about the moment. Okay. And then she got to wallow in her moment of not having any control.
Right.
You can tell the rest of the story now.
Yeah, and at the end, he used it to kind of turn around and create an affirming thing. Sometimes it's more of an edge for people to hear something nice than something mean. Like complimenting someone can definitely be edge play. And so at the end of the scene, once I had kind of gotten out all of my negative emotions, he turned it around with the crowd, telling me how much they had enjoyed the cider, it's helped me in this way or that way, and kind of having that moment, and then it was push me away and I get to cry kind of thing. So it's looking at those kind of cathartic moments. And a lot of people find like physical stress relief from even just crying. You know, there's a lot of interesting science on tears aren't just salt water. They can contain endorphins that modulate pain, hormones that are released at time of stress. Like your tears are in some ways literally flushing out your body. All the time, Stefanos, one of my favorite things he does is people will come to him because he's known as an edge player and someone who's willing to go to tears, which I'm a fluffy service top. I embrace that. I mean that in a positive way. That's my self-identity.
Hell yeah, man. She's the best fluffy service top I'd ever play with. You in a minute like that, she knows exactly what to do.
Yeah, and I can't play with someone once they get to the point of crying and being miserable. It just doesn't work for me. But Stefanos is about that life. Like Stefanos is like, oh yeah, you're crying and like look like you hate it. This is, you know.
You're making lube for me. Oh, all the tear lube. He says tear lube.
Hold on, let me get that for you.
Exactly.
No, it's not that. Okay, yeah.
And people will come to Stefanos all the time and they will say, you know, I just really need to cry. I need to cry. I can't quite get there. I feel like I'm blocked. I feel like I'm shut off from my emotions. Can you do a scene with me to help me cry? And Stefanos, being who he is, do you want to explain what you do or you want me to?
You try.
Okay.
It's more fun when you try.
So these people come and these are like people that I know would want to play with and people that he has these types of relationships with. And he just sits down with them and he's, okay, let's negotiate. Let's talk about what that looks like for you. You know, why do you feel like you need to cry? What is the situation that's happening in your life? And usually within about 10 minutes of the negotiation, they're bawling on his shoulder and they haven't even played and they get done with the negotiation and they're like, oh, I feel so much better. I don't think we need to do the cathartic scene anymore.
Look in the chat.
We already did it.
Look in the chat.
Yep. I see your people. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
So to explain to you, like so Shay said, to explain it, I think the most important part of that discussion is someone has already expressed a level of trust in me or in whoever they're talking to, but in this example, it's in me because I said we'd keep this focused on us because it's easier that way to speak from experience, right? So they've already put a level of trust in me and said, hey, I have this situation. I want to solve it. I think you can solve it for me, Stefanos. How can you and I work this out? So it's not that I'm magical, right? That person has already literally expressed that is what they want to do. And so while having the discussion with them, it's actually not entirely difficult to already kind of accidentally walk into crying. And so that happens. You know, I mean, sometimes going back to compliments, sometimes just looking at someone who's already having this problem and they tell you what's going on, you can literally ask them to tell you the problem And then really all you have to actually do is be with them and hold space for them. So in some ways, your friends and you have already done that type of edge placing.
Ooh, yeah.
And then people use this term sometimes as to mean a bad thing. I mean, it's positive in this case. Then the emotional labor that follows, that comes out of love, is your aftercare. So for those of you who are not in the BDSM scene, who are like, what the hell is edge play? What is going on here? Sometimes it's that moment when you have a close friend of yours or a person you just met that becomes extremely vulnerable to you and opens up to something you didn't know. And you support them. And then following it, you remind them that it's okay to be that way, that it's perfectly okay to feel those emotions and that they're actually healthily expressing those emotions. And certainly I'm not a therapist, and certainly I would encourage people to go to someone who could be a therapist. But sometimes you just need to bawl your freaking eyes out. Well, I mean, look at the world today.
Oh yeah, we have a therapist in the chat actually that said, "So as a therapist, does this mean I do edge play all day?"
You know, Kat, now Marie Claire, I think you might.
So I have a burning question that I think is really important to cover, because as you're talking about these very emotionally vulnerable places that you're going in scenes with people, and Shay, you said like the first example you gave was like, you know, I want someone to make me a sandwich and they do the cheese wrong, and then I'd go up. And like when I hear that, and I'm not saying like I'm triggered, but I had a real life situation like that with an ex. And like, if I was doing a scene with you like that, and I didn't know that's exactly where we were going, I could get triggered. So in these types of play, we may be planning to do something cathartic, but you can't always guarantee a psychological safety. Shit happens. Sometimes you get triggered or you go to a negative emotional place. What do you do when that happens? And what kind of negotiation can you do ahead of time to help mitigate those situations before they happen?
Yeah, there's a quote that I like that I think fits in with what you're saying, which is that it's a proverb. Once on the tiger's back, we can't always be sure of picking a place to dismount. And I think that applies extra to edge play. You know, once you're on that, sometimes unpredictable things can happen. And my friend Naj, who lives in Seattle, teaches a lot about consent. And one of the things they say that I think is really wise is, and this has context, so it needs to be taken within context. If you're only giving consent for things to go perfectly, that's not real consent. That isn't to say that someone should violate your hard limits and say, well, if you're only giving consent, blah, blah, blah. It is to say that risk awareness involves this idea that shit can go sideways. People are human. Mistakes can be made. You can come up on a limit that you didn't realize was there, that your partner didn't realize was there. An example that I would tell from my own history within the scene, when I was a brand newbie bottom, I was playing with someone we considered to be a mentor. We had negotiated fairly extensively.
We considered and still consider them to be a mentor. So it's not like this suddenly ended that. I want to fix that moment there. I would still consider them a mentor. Okay.
And we had negotiated fairly broadly for an impact play scene. Stefanos knows I have a history of being in and consent warning for discussion of domestic violence right now.
Hold on, wait. We give a consent warning. This is time for people to mute themselves, mute us. So we're giving you that moment to mute it. Okay, now we're going to start talking about it.
So I was in a relationship when I was 18 and 19 with my ex-husband. Was very alcoholic. He was abusive. He mostly would slap me, but there was other abuse that happened as well. And so face slapping had always been a hard limit and Stefanos knew this history. It's not something I had necessarily thought to articulate as a hard limit. Just Stefanos knew this was a thing that had happened. At this time, I'd really only ever played with Stefanos.
And it never really occurred to me at the time to have a discussion with someone about don't slap Shay. That seemed like a really fucking crazy thing to do.
And it didn't come up in negotiations. I didn't tell the top in this situation not to slap my face.
And I didn't think to mention it either, because like this is our man, right? Like, we trust him. He's always had our back.
Yeah, we didn't say yes or no. I didn't state it as a limit. We get in the middle of the scene, and this top reaches over and just like right across the face.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you need to understand, Shay's in a moment of like some sort of ecstasy from all the pain and the things that he's doing with her, and I'm watching from the sidelines because I'm like learning all these skills he's teaching me. And when Shay says he reached over and slapped her, I want to be very clear. Shay is like arms up, like arms behind also, right? So she can't even defend herself. And he just looks her right in the face. Does it, this hand right here, you don't even see it. It's just, and all of a sudden her whole face just like cocks to the side. You see the whole slow motion thing. A little bit of spit came out of her mouth and the whole deal. And I immediately was like, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck, we're in trouble. Oh my God, we're in trouble. I'm the one freaking out right now. I'm just about like panicking.
And we did call the scene at that point, and we had a long conversation, and I kind of had to sit with it. And how am I feeling right now? Am I okay? Am I not okay? And it came about that within this specific setting, it was more okay than I would have thought. But what if his breath had smelled like Jim Beam? Then that would be something entirely. I had to kind of think through what are the triggers, and alcohol still is a big one for me in terms of a hard limit. But sometimes you don't find those until something happened, and that could have very easily been a lot more catastrophic of an experience for me than it was. Only really, we didn't have a way to know that. And did we negotiate perfectly for that scene? We didn't. And as the person on the receiving end, I think we both share responsibility for having that negotiation and for knowing that sometimes you're going to hit a minefield that you didn't even know was there. And there has to be a plan for how are you going to deal with that, both physically and psychologically. It's not the most fun conversation to have, but knowing that those things can happen. And some of that is negotiation, which we haven't talked about as much, but I'd love to talk about that.
Let's dive into some negotiation.
Sure. I mean, to just kind of think about this moment of finding a landmine, right? And this is part of negotiation. Like, what if you find a landmine? What actually happens? What do you do? The level of responsibility in any of these activities that involve the community of BDSM, I believe, is half mine and half the person I'm playing with. All right. And some people will argue finer or harder points. And I'm sure that maybe the chat might fill with them right now. I don't know. But I have to do my job to understand my limits in the place and the role that I'm taking on. And like going back to that scene with putting my feet up on someone and me feeling like a misogynistic representation of my parental unit that I didn't want to be, right? It didn't dawn on me at the time when it was negotiated with me that this is the aftercare. It sounded hot. I got to it and freaked out. So I made myself do it, which I would think in retrospect was probably a terrible plan. I think really making yourself do something is a choice at that point. The choice I made was I'm going to push through it. And that left me with some stuff I had to process. I think maybe what I should have done was been like, holy shit, I didn't realize how bad this was. Because after we processed it, even she realized it wasn't real. And she didn't feel really cared for. Okay. And I felt really awkward. And so really should have safe worded and said, hey, whoa, let's have a conversation about this moment. And Shay was actually smarter than I was as the top in the scene for saying, whoa, we need to stop here. And I was like, all full of, manning up and like, I'll push through this. I got this. And that was a terrible plan. I shouldn't have done it.
I mean, especially for edge play, we talk about safe words and it can seem like, well, safe words are for beginners or something along those lines. And I've also heard people say, we don't think safe words are appropriate for beginners because you should just use no, which is also valid, unless you've specifically negotiated that no doesn't mean no, then no absolutely means no.
Yeah,
and safe words don't remove any responsibility to monitor for ongoing consent, for nonverbal signals, for cues other than that safe word. So it's an added communication tool. And especially for edge play, safe words are for both partners, all partners. There can be definitely edges that you're exploring that apply to everyone. But yeah, looking at the negotiation aspect.
Sorry, I didn't mean to side run us on that.
I would say that there's a analogy that we use, Stefanos touched on quickly, which is the field of fucks negotiation tactic. So there's a little cross stitch thing that I like, and it's got this like little figure going like this to a field that's barren, like this. You know, it's an empty field, and this figure says, "Behold, the field in which I grow my fucks. Lay thine eyes upon it, and thou shalt see that it is barren." And so this is what when we're negotiating for play. If I wanted to negotiate for something that's playful, just a lighthearted scene, which we also teach a class on that, and it's super fun. We love doing that. We want to find a field with no fucks, a field that is barren. Nobody cares. Making fun of someone's spelling or handwriting is often a good one, like have them write something and then yell at them about who was your second grade teacher and why didn't they have it together. Obviously, that could be somebody's hard limit too, but trying to find that field with no fucks, right?
Which is really fun. I just, the handwriting scene, don't ever let that one go out of your head. I mean, the number of ways in which you can fuck with someone over a conjunctive comma.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And most people, don't really care. Or, me fucking with someone over the fact that they brought me a sandwich with the wrong kind of cheese. That could be, as you were talking about, Sunny, that could be very triggering for someone. Or, usually when I do that, I'm kind of going to my edge of the top and I want to pick a bottom who just thinks it's really funny that I'm yelling at them about a cheese sandwich. And so making sure you kind of know where those lines are.
You know what? I like to we're going to sidetrack you for a second. I once told one of her bottoms she was playing with to bring her a turkey and cheddar jack sandwich. You know why? Because she's vegetarian and hates spicy food.
Oh,
that was a paddling. That's paddling.
No. I knew that the bottom could handle it because they were a friend of mine, and so I was like, "They're like, what do I bring Shay? She said she's hungry. What do I do?" And I'm like, turkey, cheddar jack cheese, couple of pepperoncinis on the side. You'll be great. A glass of whole milk if you can find it.
So I have a question for you guys, and this is a little bit more challenging. One of the things about edge play I like to do is do things that surprise the submissive. So in certain circumstances, you can't ask them for consent, but you have to figure it out. So I'm going to give you a situation and I want to know how you would approach this. I have a seizure disorder, and when I play with people, I make sure to talk to them about all of their medical conditions. So one of my favorite things to do is after I've vetted somebody, I've talked to them, we've done a yes, no, maybe list and done consent. I have them up on the rack. They're completely suspended. I let them know that I had a seizure disorder well before this. I fake a seizure. How do you go about getting consent for something like that when it's going to, like, the nature of the event has to be a complete surprise?
That's really interesting. Wow. I think that it gets into the idea of the style of negotiation. So know whether and articulate with your partner whether they're comfortable negotiating by inclusion or exclusion. So negotiating by inclusion is we're stating this is the specific things that are okay and everything else is off limits, right? It tends to be, in my opinion, sometimes a safer way for people who are beginners to negotiate. We're doing X, Y, and Z. We're not going beyond that. We're using this tool and that's it. We're not touching this area, that area, only this.
I happen to have this leather paddle. It's only going to be on your buttocks and your thighs above your knee. It's not going to go on the side or anywhere else. My hands are not going to waver beyond the area between the side of your bodies and your shoulder blade and your spine, and it will stop below your neck. No, I'm not pulling your hair. Boom, that's all we're doing.
And it's nothing's a panacea. Like, you can always still have issues, and like I said, nothing removes your responsibility to monitor for ongoing consent. But so if you're doing a negotiation by inclusion, then I would think definitely that kind of thing is right out. If you're explicitly doing a negotiation by exclusion in terms of we're having this risk-aware moment of I'm saying X, Y, Z thing are not okay, which it's a riskier kind of negotiation because am I going to think of literally everything that's not okay? Am I going to mention that you shouldn't shave my eyebrows? Am I going to mention that you can't take my credit card and go on an Amazon shopping spree while I'm tied up? Like, I'm going to forget. And so it relies on a different level of trust to a certain extent.
So how to negotiate for a fake seizure is still maybe not completely answered, is it?
You know what? Yes, it is. Because it's
articulated, I think that
The
helps.
people that I did this with were always long-term submissives. It wasn't ever for pickup play. It was for somebody that I could read. And so I had a lot of those exclusionary stuff already worked into the nature of the, of the negotiation and everything. But it's interesting hearing about inclusion and exclusion, because that I think is going to, just real quick, Carter, that would make me cry.
I think that was all about the sandwich.
Was it the sandwich, Carter?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was 5 minutes.
I'm with you. I hate pepper jack cheese, so I would beat some ass.
I'm okay with pepper jack cheese, but I really do prefer a smoked Gouda, just the end of it. Anyway,
you guys are like brothers from another mother. What the hell?
Ken and I are. I mean, the only thing. I'm not as long as Ken. We've had this discussion before.
One thing somebody mentioned in the chat about using no as a safe word, I'm a really big believer, and I think it's very important to teach beginners that unless you've specifically negotiated otherwise, like no still means no. And you should definitely have that conversation very explicitly in terms of, if you want me to stop, no or stop I will listen to those. Unless we've specifically negotiated, we're doing consensual non-consent, where I want to yell at you to stop and not actually want you to stop.
Right.
So make
sure.
Don't
stop. No, stop. Don't stop.
Yeah,
no.
whatever safe words or signals you're using. And I love the idea of safe signals, especially for edge play. I like using what we call things that require positive action. So a lot of times people will have a freeze response. If you're having a freeze response, are you going to be able to say that safe word or even give my signal of flashing my hands? I'm not going to be able to do that. So you want to build in some sort of inaction safe word, which could be a call and response where, I ask how you
Where
are.
are you?
And then that's my green. I flash both my hands.
Right. How you doing? And then one hand comes up, right? And so now I know we're reaching a spot. And like, where are you? God damn it, Shay, talk to me. And I'm like, I'm up in Shay's face. I'm like yelling at her, trying to get an answer. And this is the response I'm getting.
Then that's a red.
We're done.
Because there's no action. So
Shay's
thinking through those communication tools, I've had people who told me I may go nonverbal, but my panic response is to squeeze my fists. So we give them a squeaky ball to hold on to. And then if they squeeze that squeaky ball, I know, oh, fuck, we need to, that's for sure my red signal.
Also, when you hear the sound of a squeaky toy in the middle of a very, very serious scene, some shit happens in your brain.
But we're into clown play, so it might just be part of the whole.
Okay, so it might not.
Yeah,
all right.
That could
all right.
But all of that is like a negotiation communication. Safe words are a communication tool. They're something to enhance your play. They're not the be all and end all. It's that idea of, don't mistake the finger that's pointing for that which it's pointing to. Safe words are a tool to get you to that understanding. They're not a cure.
Yeah. So
okay, John, I'm totally down with you. Sorry, Tony. I agree with all the comments that I've seen before, John, but I love pups.
Yes.
I love pups.
Yeah.
So yes. So if as part pup myself, yes, squeaks can be exciting, but they do bring me to the attention of what's happening.
Yeah.
You want
Sorry,
to know your audience.
I saw a pup and I was like,
puppy. Really quick, I do want to comment though that the comments here have been really juicy on Get Vocal. So if anyone's watching who's not over on Get Vocal, or if you have your chat minimized, like look at some of the conversation that's been going on. It's really good. We're almost at the top of the hour. So here's what's going to happen. Really quick, for those on Get Vocal, I dropped a few links in the chat. One is our Patreon that I discussed before. Two is we have a free sex positive, very kink friendly, like most of the people are on there into kink in some way, shape, or form, Discord community that's free. I have the link there in the chat. It's bit.ly/DiscordASP. Also, I got my discount for Stockroom because I know you're a bunch of kinky people. And if you want to go buy stuff, get that 15% discount. And the last thing, I have Stefanos and Shay's website in the chat. So what we're going to do is in just a minute. I'm going to let you talk. I'll let you tell all the things real quick. In just a minute, we're going to shut down the recording, but we're not going away. So those of you who are watching on Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook Live, now is your chance. Get your butts over to Get Vocal. Look above you. There should be a link because we are going to keep talking and it could get weird. And this was such a juicy conversation. I want to reiterate, This is not all of Edge Play in a nice package. This was just an interesting discussion that might be for some of you an introduction. So now you know these are the things I need to learn more about. For some of you who are really already into kink, this might just be a great discussion that was a new perspective that gave you some new ideas, inspired your creative juices. You got some new insights, that sort of thing. But please, go learn more stuff. And Shay and Stefanos, tell us, one, where else we can find you. And two, I know with COVID and, you're not traveling and teaching. So are you teaching online? Are there places where people can go learn from you? Because now they didn't know before, they know you're amazing educators. So give us the goods.
Okay, so what I want you guys to do is, first off, let's get serious about this Get Vocal thing. I didn't know shit about Get Vocal until one day I happened across Sunny and Ken on Twitter on a live feed. They said come to the after party, so I quickly downloaded Get Vocal on my phone, made a really quick thing, and joined them. And they were like, "Oh my God, it's Stefanos! I didn't know you were here." Well, I didn't know I was either. So download the damn app and put it on your phone, because the shit that happens afterwards is way too much fun.
And also you can get it in your browser too. If you're on a machine, just open the browser tab. You don't got to download shit. Yep.
Okay, so you're asking where you can find more stuff about what we're doing. We don't have anything particularly booked. Shay has a couple things coming up that we're going to do. I just noted our Twitter, and that's our Twitter. And then our Instagram is Maestro Stefanos as well. And what is yours, Shay?
Shay Tiziano.
Right, and so Shay has an Instagram as well, and mine is Maestro Stefanos pretty much everywhere. We're on Facebook by Shay Tiziano or Maestro Stefanos. You can find us there. Go to our website, piles of articles. That we have discount codes too for kinky shit. I don't care, whatever. Just buy from the locals, people. Buy from the people you love. Support Sunny and Ken. Throw diamonds at them. Buy their stuff. But where can you? No, seriously. Throw some more goddamn tips at them.
Thank you.
Doing awesome stuff.
They're doing, and this is free. We're just all here for free. There's no money. I'm not getting any of those diamonds. Just give them to all of them anyway. And if I did, get to them anyway. But where can you find our stuff? Just check our website. Join our mailing list.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have a mailing list, which I highly recommend. We have a few things coming up. I've learned that online classes super burn me out. There isn't that audience interaction, and it's just really hard. We're not doing a super ton of online classes for that reason, but I do have some live things coming up we're going to be working with Folsom Street Fair and doing a Twisted Windows stage. So we're going to work on a bondage lounge for that. I have a few other projects working on.
What's that?
We have videos website, just,
Go to our website.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we'll send out the mailing list stuff.
Oh my God. It's fun. Shay gets burned out on online stuff. I could be here all day long. I apparently am going to be reading the best pirate stories ever starting on Get Vocal. I got to come up with a time. So will be coming up.
Nice.
I'll let you all know. I won't do it on Wednesdays between 8 and 9. Because that would suck.
Yes, as Carter said, my Twitter, I curate I retweet a lot of stuff. I tweet a lot of stuff. I think my Twitter feed is pretty okay. I recommend it.
Nice.
Much better than my Facebook feed, I got to be honest with you, because I have no love for Facebook. I'm sorry if you're watching on Facebook. I love you, but I don't love Facebook.
I haven't, unless Shay's posted it for me, I probably haven't posted on Facebook for 4 months.
Yeah.
But Twitter, hit me up on Twitter. I love interacting with people on Twitter. So at me, and feel free to quote things I said in class, although hopefully not wildly out of, or in the discussion today, and not wildly out of context, hopefully. And
yes, Harley.
If you want to have a discussion, we can do that.
Very, very cool.
And really quick, last thing, guys, those of you that are interested not only in sex but in gaming, especially because you mentioned pirates, I am going to be DMing live on Twitch, and we put a link up there at twitch.tv/ThunderpantsRPG. And I have 4 campaigns that I'm doing right now. So Tuesdays, we're doing our witch campaign. Thursdays are going to be pirates. Fridays, goblins. And Saturday's Dark Circus. So if you're interested in D&D type games, you want to learn how to do it, this is for beginners and for old pros. Please feel free to join us. And yes, thank you, Maurice. I love Maurice.
And so really quick, I am going to open the slots. And like I said, we were having such a juicy conversation. I was like, I can't open the slots for questions just yet. So slots are open. Folks are coming up. we're going to end the broadcast, which ends the simulcast, but we're still going to stay here. Get over to the after party. Click on it.
Get over here.
Don't go anywhere.
Or it's bit.ly, bit.ly/Sunny Get Vocal, SUNNY GETVOKL. We'll see you back next week. We're going to be talking about implants.
Implant play.
Implant play.
Impact play. Cross. So we'll see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific. And bye. Okay, everyone stay here and get vocal.